Well, this is greeting you again, and I'm breaking a little bit with the routine because I'm not continuing with a fresh series, but I really believe that what I'm going to talk about today is important. It's John's Gospel chapter 14, because here Jesus says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." And I feel it's so critical at the moment because as I'm speaking, we've just had a quite disturbing general election, in the sense that one party has been elected with an overwhelming majority, but the total majority is only 30% of the population. And so what's happening is we're being governed by a government that only 30% of people voted for. We've also got the situation, of course, with the continuing war in the Ukraine, and the sense that there is no end in sight. The fact that, as I'm speaking, it's only 2 days ago that there was an attempt to assassinate Trump in America. But the whole of the world was upset. There's problems with China. There are massive problems in Europe because of a recent election in France. They're saying France is almost ungovernable. Germany is in difficulty. So the whole world is shaking. And I do believe that we are getting much closer to the return of Christ than any could realize. You know, when we've waited 2,000 years for this, one can understand people hesitating to put dates or think it's coming. But as we hear that the possibility is of an imminent Third World War, and that, particularly because Israel is involved, could precipitate the end. And so that's why I come back to this, because Jesus was saying to his disciples, don't be troubled. You believe in God, believe in me. But I'd go back a little bit further into verse 36 of chapter 13. This is taking place, as you know, after the Last Supper, when Jesus is actually announcing his death, in the sense that he's announced who will betray him. Well, he says someone will betray him. And then he's saying, I'm going away. But in verse 36, Peter says, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus said, well, where I go, you can't follow me now, but you will follow me later. In verse 37, Peter said, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I'd lay down my life for you. I'd die for you, he's saying. I mean, this is a very strong statement, and I don't hear this commented on so much, but Peter is actually saying here, I want to follow you, however difficult it might be, because I would lay down my life for you. And Jesus answered him and says, will you actually lay down your life for me? This is verse 38, and you get this vast statement, verily, I say to you, the cock will not crow 3 times until you have denied me 3 times. So you understand the circumstances that Peter is saying, Lord, I would die for you. And yet Jesus is saying, the very man that's saying that will deny me. This is where I feel it's so important to look at chapter 14. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. And he qualifies it saying, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Even Peter. And if I go and prepare a place, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. It's very interesting because we move on from there, and here the Lord is talking so much about his future coming and about the kingdom. But then he says, and this is so important, by the time you get to verse 11, well, verse 10, because they're saying, show us the Father. In verse 10 he says, don't you believe that I'm in the Father and the Father in me? Or else believe me for the very sake of the work that I do. And in verse 12, and this to me is the critical verse that I'm coming to. In verse 12, Jesus says, truly, I say to you, and when he says it, truly, this is a very strong statement that he's making. He that believes on me, the works that I do, will he do also. You see, at this moment, what Jesus is doing is setting the scene for the development of the church, the establishment of the church, the believers, preparing them for the coming kingdom. Remember that what Jesus is talking about here, firstly to Peter and then to all of the disciples, he's talking about heaven. I go to prepare a place. But then he's saying, the truth is that you will receive the same power that I have, so that you can continue the work on. You see, this is even before Pentecost. This is before the descent of the Holy Spirit. Jesus is forecasting and saying, and this is something that I like to home on very strongly, because people don't understand this. Even a lot of Pentecostal people who've received the Holy Spirit, don't understand the importance of what Jesus is saying. He says, whosoever will believe in me. Now, believing is more than just a nominal acceptance. If you really believe who Jesus is, and that there is a coming kingdom, and that the whole of this time is a preparation for that coming kingdom, he says, he that believes in me will do the same things that I do, and greater, because I go to my Father.